The diplomatic vessel Harmony's edge hung in orbit above Dracoria Prime, its sleek hull reflecting the pale blue light of the system's twin suns. Inside the conference chamber, Ambassador Kalen stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the holographic display with growing concern. The situation on the planet's surface was deteriorating rapidly. They still refused to eat. Kalen asked, his voice steady despite the weight of the situation. The Dracorian minister, a towering reptilian being with golden scales that shimmered under the artificial lights, lowered his head in what appeared to be shame. Yes, Ambassador. The royal cubs have not consumed anything in 4 planetary rotations. Our physicians are at a loss. Every delicacy from across our empire has been offered. Every traditional comfort food prepared. They refuse it all. Kalen turned from the display to face the minister directly. And their parents? Emperor Torvik and Empress Celera perished in the reactor accident 3 cycles ago. The cubs witnessed everything through the viewing screens before the blast shields engaged. The minister's voice cracked slightly. They are traumatized beyond our ability to heal. Without sustenance, they will not survive another 2 rotations. The human ambassador felt a familiar ache in his chest. He had seen trauma before, had witnessed how grief could shut down even the strongest beings. How many cubs are we talking about? 7. The eldest is only 9 standard years. The youngest, Vash, is barely 5. The minister's clawed hands trembled. Vash was their father's pride. He led the others in everything. Now he leads them in this silent protest against living. Kalen closed his eyes briefly. 7 children. 7 orphaned children refusing to eat because the pain was too much to bear. I need to see them. Ambassador, our finest healers have failed. What could your species possibly? Trust me. Kalen interrupted gently. Please. 2 hours later, Kalen stood outside the royal nursery complex with his security detail. Each human marine carried their standard field pack, looking somewhat confused about why their ambassador had ordered them to bring combat rations to a diplomatic meeting. Sergeant Park leaned close to Kalen. Sir, are you sure about this? No, Kalen admitted. But I know what grief looks like, and I know what helps. Sometimes the fanciest food in the galaxy means nothing. Sometimes you just need something real. The massive doors opened, and Kalen entered alone. The nursery was enormous, filled with elaborate furnishings and toys that would have cost fortunes on any human world. But 7 small Dracorian cubs sat clustered together in the center of the room, their scales dull and their eyes hollow. They barely acknowledged his presence. The smallest one, Vash, sat at the front of the group. His silver scales were losing their luster, and his body trembled with weakness. But his eyes held something that made Kalen's heart clench, a stubborn defiance mixed with unbearable pain. Kalen sat down on the floor a respectful distance away. He did not speak. He simply opened his field pack and pulled out a standard human military combat ration. The packaging crinkled loudly in the silent room. 7 pairs of eyes turned toward him. I know you don't want to eat, Kalen said quietly, opening the ration pack. I know food probably feels wrong right now. Like accepting it would mean forgetting them. Vash's eyes narrowed slightly. Kalen pulled out the compact meal components, a protein bar, dehydrated fruit, a sealed pouch of soup concentrate. When I was young, I lost my parents too. Accident on a colony ship. I stopped eating for days. Told myself I wasn't hungry. Told myself food didn't matter anymore. The cubs remained silent, but Kalen noticed they were listening. My grandmother came to see me. She didn't bring fancy food. She didn't bring my favorite meals. You know what she brought? Kalen held up the simple protein bar. Field rations. The same thing my parents used to carry when they worked the mining colonies. She told me that eating wasn't about celebrating. It was about surviving. About honoring what they would have wanted. Kalen unwrapped the protein bar and took a bite. It was dry and bland, tasting like processed nutrients and determination. She told me that my parents didn't sacrifice everything just so I could give up. That every breath I took, every meal I ate, every day I survived was proof that their love mattered. That they mattered. Vash's lower lip trembled. These rations, Kalen continued, gesturing to his pack, they're not delicious. They're not meant to be. They're what soldiers eat when everything is terrible and the world feels broken. They're what we eat when we need to keep going even though we don't want to. He pulled out more rations from his pack and set them on the floor between himself and the cubs. Your people have been bringing you the finest foods in the Empire, trying to make you happy. But you don't want to be happy right now. That's okay. You don't have to be. Kalen stood slowly, leaving the rations on the ground. These are just fuel, not celebration, not comfort, just survival, for when you're ready to honor them by living. He walked toward the door, then paused. Your father, Emperor Torvik, was known across the galaxy as a warrior who never gave up. Even when things looked impossible, Kalen looked back at Vash. I think he'd want you to be a warrior too. Not the kind who fights with weapons. The kind who fights to keep living when living feels impossible. The door closed behind him. Outside, the Dracorian minister waited anxiously. Ambassador, give them time, Kalen said, and send in my Marines with the rest of our field rations. Tell them to sit with the cubs. Don't talk unless spoken to. Just be there. 3 hours passed before the nursery doors opened again. Sergeant Park emerged, her eyes wet with tears. In her hand, she held an empty ration wrapper. Vash ate first, she reported, her voice thick with emotion. Took a bite of the protein bar. Then the others followed. They've each consumed at least one full ration pack. The Dracorian minister's scales rippled with shock. How? How did simple field rations succeed where our finest cuisine failed? Kalen smiled sadly. Because they didn't need fine cuisine. They needed permission to survive without celebrating. They needed food that matched how they felt inside, plain, difficult, but enough to keep going. Over the following days, the royal cubs gradually returned to normal eating. But they insisted on starting each meal with a human field ration first. Vash explained to the healers that it reminded them that survival wasn't about being happy. It was about being strong enough to carry forward the love they'd been given. The Dracorian Empire formally requested a permanent human presence in their royal court. Not for military might or technological exchange, but for something their advanced civilization had somehow forgotten in their pursuit of perfection. The understanding that sometimes the broken need simple tools to begin healing, not elaborate solutions. Ambassador Kalen watched from orbit as the cubs appeared in public for the first time since the tragedy, their scales regaining their luster. Vash stood at the front, leading his siblings with quiet dignity. In his small clawed hand, barely visible to the cameras, he clutched an empty human ration wrapper like a talisman.